Imagine walking into your own home after months of serving your country only to find your entire family waiting to label you a monster. I stood in my living room, clutching my 14-month-old daughter, while my husband tossed a fraudulent medical document onto the table and claimed she was not his. His mother instantly pointed toward the exit, screaming for me to leave their sight forever. But before I could even process the betrayal, the front door swung open again, and a legendary 3-star general stepped inside, instantly freezing everyone in the room. To understand how I ended up facing a room full of accusers, you have to look back at that grueling morning. I was finishing up an exhausting stretch of administrative duty at Fort Bragg, feeling that heavy military exhaustion deep inside my bones. Despite the fatigue, my heart was full because I was finally heading home to Raleigh. I picked up my little girl Lily from the base daycare, smiling as she babbled happily in her car seat. I truly believed this homecoming would mark a beautiful new beginning for my marriage. During my drive home, my husband Brandon sent a cryptic text message telling me not to be late because his mother had arranged a massive surprise. I felt a surge of hope, assuming his family was finally ready to accept my military career instead of treating it as a constant burden. When I pulled into our driveway and saw the line of vehicles, I assumed a warm celebration was waiting inside. Instead, when I stepped across the threshold, the suffocating silence in the crowded living room made my stomach drop instantly. The entire extended family sat shoulder to shoulder, staring at me with cold, judgmental glares that felt like physical blows. Brandon stood beside his mother, Evelyn, who looked like she was presiding over a criminal courtroom. Without a single word of welcome, Brandon grabbed a white envelope and threw the contents onto the coffee table, loudly announcing that the paternity test proved Lily was not his child. Before I could even defend my innocence, Evelyn stepped forward and ordered me to get out of their house. The sudden arrival of Lieutenant General Thomas Vance changed everything, as his imposing presence in full-dress uniform commanded immediate silence from the hostile crowd. I instinctively assumed the position of attention while trying to comfort my crying daughter against my shoulder. General Vance looked around the tense room, sensing the hostility, and calmly asked if I was all right, while noting the malicious behavior of my in-laws. Brandon tried to dismiss the situation as a private family matter, but the general remained completely unmoved. General Vance calmly picked up the document from the table, reviewing the details with a practiced eye that had analyzed evidence for nearly 40 years. He questioned Brandon about the unaccredited laboratory, the lack of legal authority, and the completely compromised chain of custody for the biological samples. With a few quiet words, the general exposed the paperwork as an unverified fabrication, shifting the tension in the room as my relatives began exchanging nervous glances. He then advised me to leave that toxic environment immediately. My hands shook violently as I buckled Lily into her seat in the driveway, the crushing weight of the betrayal finally breaking through my military composure. General Vance followed us outside, offering a clean handkerchief and a few quiet words of absolute belief that kept me from falling apart completely. He handed me a business card for a trusted family lawyer, advising me to avoid screaming matches with people who had already chosen to believe a lie. That night, my close friend Sarah welcomed us into her home without judgment. While my daughter slept peacefully in a guest room, my phone erupted with dozens of furious text messages from Brandon, who rapidly shifted from anger to manipulation. He claimed that my quick departure made me look incredibly guilty, conveniently forgetting that his own mother had demanded my exile. Sitting at Sarah's kitchen table, I realized they were already trying to rewrite the narrative to protect themselves. My friend gently reminded me that the best response was to stay completely silent until we had undeniable proof. The next morning, I returned to the empty house to collect basic necessities for my daughter while Brandon and Evelyn were away. As I packed a small suitcase upstairs, I noticed Brandon's unlocked laptop displaying a sudden message from a woman named Amanda, stating that their plan had worked perfectly. My heart stopped as I scrolled through weeks of detailed messages exposing a calculated conspiracy to humiliate me, alienate my family, and force me out so they could easily liquidate our property. My shock deepened as I discovered that Brandon had also spent months quietly draining our joint savings account, transferring over $40,000 into a secret fund. This was not a sudden emotional mistake. It was a long-term financial betrayal executed while I was deployed serving my country. Suddenly, I heard Evelyn's car pull into the driveway, forcing me to quickly email the evidence to myself and slip downstairs. When she confronted me with bitter words, I simply looked at her calmly and walked away. The following afternoon, I presented the digital evidence to a prominent family attorney named Diana Jenkins, who immediately recognized the situation as an illegal attempt to defraud a service member. Diana instructed me to maintain total radio silence, allowing Brandon to believe his cruel deception was succeeding while we prepared our legal counterattack. Watching my daughter play safely in Sarah's backyard gave me a fierce sense of purpose, transforming my heartbreak into a cold, focused determination to achieve justice. The court-mandated DNA test took place the following week at a fully accredited forensic facility, where every sample was meticulously sealed and verified. Brandon arrived late, accompanied by an overly confident Evelyn, both of them acting as though my defeat was already guaranteed. I remained perfectly composed during the procedure, refusing to engage in any petty arguments or defend myself out of anger. 3 days later, Diana called me into her office to reveal a definitive 99% paternity match. When the official laboratory results were delivered to Brandon, his arrogant response was to simply claim the medical professionals had made a critical mistake. However, the undeniable truth began spreading through the extended family, causing several relatives to call me with tearful apologies for their silence. Brandon's younger sister eventually admitted that she had witnessed him burning a mysterious envelope on the night of my return, which likely contained the authentic documents he had hidden from everyone. Our legal team eventually secured Brandon's hidden bank statements through a court subpoena, revealing massive financial transfers to Amanda, alongside weekend hotel receipts. Amanda herself ended up contacting me, crying as she explained that Brandon had lied to her by claiming we were already legally separated. She voluntarily surrendered her entire text history to my lawyer, exposing Brandon's explicit written admissions that he knew the original DNA report was completely fake from the very beginning. The final divorce proceedings took place in a quiet courtroom where Diana presented our mountain of irrefutable evidence before a stern judge. Brandon sat with his head lowered as his own text messages were read aloud, utterly destroying his claims of being an innocent, mistaken husband. The judge granted me sole physical custody, ordered supervised visits for Brandon, and commanded the immediate return of every dollar stolen from our savings. I walked out of that courthouse feeling an incredible sense of vindication. 6 months later, a fragile and exhausted Evelyn knocked on my door, holding a vintage hand-knitted baby blanket that belonged to Brandon's grandmother. She wept openly on the porch, admitting her profound failure as a mother and asking for a chance to know her granddaughter. I looked at the woman who had once screamed at me to leave, and I realized that true strength meant setting firm boundaries while allowing room for healing. If you found this story inspiring, please subscribe for more powerful real-life journeys.